I didn't notice him the first time he sat behind me. That's important, because if I had, I might have paid attention sooner. This was during my last semester of college. Large public university. Big lecture hall. One of those classes where attendance technically mattered, but no one checked closely. I always sat in the same spot. Third row from the back. Aisle seat. Close enough to hear, far enough to disappear. The first few weeks, the seats around me were different every day. People rotated. Some stopped coming. Some showed up late and sat wherever they could. That's why I didn't notice him, until he sat one row behind me again. Same seat, same row, same place. I remember thinking it was a coincidence. People are creatures of habit. I was one too. The next week he was there again. Same seat. I still hadn't really looked at him, just registered a presence, a shape in my peripheral vision when I leaned back. Then one morning, he was one row closer, directly behind me this time. I felt it immediately. Not fear, awareness. Like when someone stands too close in line and you don't know why it bothers you, but it does. I shifted forward in my seat, pretended to take notes, didn't turn around. The lecture ended. I packed up quickly and left. The following class, he was back one row behind me again. I relaxed, told myself I was overthinking it. Then the class after that, he was closer again. This pattern continued for weeks. One row closer, then back, then closer again. Always behind me, never beside me, never in front. I finally turned around once. Just a glance, quick, casual. He was average looking, early 20s, brown hair, neutral face, nothing memorable. But he was already looking at me, not startled, not caught off guard, like he'd been waiting for me to turn. I looked away immediately. After that, I started switching seats. Different rows, different sides of the room, sometimes even sitting near the front. It didn't matter. Within 2 or 3 classes, he'd be behind me again. Always a few rows back at first. Then closer. I stopped sitting in the aisle. He stopped sitting in the aisle, too. I skipped a class. The next time I showed up, he was there. Same distance behind me as if I'd never missed a day. I told myself it was still coincidence. Big class, lots of people. Patterns happen. But then something else changed. He started leaving when I did. Not immediately, not obviously. But if I slowed down while packing my bag, he slowed too. If I left quickly, I heard footsteps behind me matching my pace. Once, I stopped abruptly near the exit and pretended to tie my shoe. He stopped too, right behind me. Not close enough to touch, close enough to feel. That night, I checked my class roster online. Hundreds of students, no photos, just names. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just wanted something concrete. The next lecture, I sat near the front, surrounded by people. He sat 4 rows behind me. The closest he'd ever been that early. Halfway through the lecture, I felt a vibration in my backpack. My phone. A text from an unknown number. "Do you always sit here now?" My hands went cold. I didn't respond. I didn't turn around. I left before the lecture ended and walked straight to campus security. They took my statement seriously, asked questions, asked if he'd said anything directly to me. I said no. They told me that made things harder. They offered to walk me to my car for a few days. I accepted. The next lecture, he wasn't there. Relief hit me so hard I almost cried. He wasn't there the lecture after that either, or the next. I thought it was over, until finals week. I sat down for the exam early, nervous, tired, ready to be done with everything. Someone sat behind me. I didn't need to turn around. I knew. Halfway through the exam, a folded piece of paper slid onto my desk from behind. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a simple sentence. "I liked you better when you didn't notice me." I raised my hand and stood up immediately. When I looked back, the seat behind me was empty. Campus security checked the cameras later. He arrived early, sat behind me, left before anyone noticed. They never found out who he was. I still choose aisle seats, and I still count the rows behind me. I used to work the closing shift at a warehouse on the edge of town. Nothing unusual, just long hours under buzzing fluorescent lights, the hum of machinery in the background, and a 30-minute drive home along quiet industrial roads that emptied out after midnight. That drive was the only quiet part of my day. That's why I noticed the car. About a week after I started the job, I realized there was always a set of headlights behind me when I left the parking lot. Not close enough to be aggressive, not far enough to lose sight of. Just there. Same distance, same angle, never passing, never falling back. At first, I didn't think much of it. There were only 2 main roads out of that area, both leading toward the highway. It made sense someone else worked similar hours. But after a few nights, something started to feel off. No matter which lane I was in, the car stayed directly behind me. When I sped up, it sped up. When I slowed down, it did too. One night, instead of turning toward the highway, I took a side road that led through an older residential area. I never used that route. It added 10 minutes to the drive. The car followed. Another night, I pulled into a gas station and parked near the entrance. I stayed in my car, pretending to check my phone. The headlights slowed down as they passed. Almost stopped. Then the car continued down the road. I remember feeling relieved until I pulled back out. It was behind me again within a minute. I never saw the driver. The windows were too dark, the headlights too bright, the license plate always just out of focus, like my eyes refused to process it. After about 2 weeks, I started checking my mirrors more than the road. Then one night, after a longer than usual shift, I turned onto my street and felt my stomach drop. The car was already there, parked across from my apartment building. Engine off, lights off, just sitting in the dark. I didn't pull into my usual spot. I parked a block away and watched from behind a tree. The car didn't move. I stood there for nearly an hour, phone in my hand, convincing myself I was overreacting. Eventually, the car started up and drove away. Slowly, like it had nowhere else to be. That week, things started changing. I began getting missed calls from unknown numbers. No voicemail, no breathing, just silence. My trash cans were moved from the curb to beside my building. My mailbox was opened, but nothing was taken. One morning, I found a folded piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. It was completely blank. That was the night I didn't go home. I drove straight to my sister's place across town and stayed there for 2 days. I didn't tell her everything, just said I needed space. When I finally went back to my apartment, something felt wrong before I even opened the door. The lock turned too easily. Inside, everything looked normal. No broken windows, no mess, no missing electronics. I stood in the hallway, listening. Nothing. Then I went into the bathroom. The mirror had been wiped clean in one spot, right in the center, like someone had pressed their hand against the steam while I showered. The rest of the mirror was foggy. Just that one clear mark. I quit that job the next morning and moved out in a couple of days. I never saw the car again. But even now, when I'm driving late at night, I check my rearview mirror more than I should. And every time I notice a car that stays a little too steady behind me, I don't wait to see if it passes. I lived alone and used to rely on routines more than I like to admit. Same alarm every morning, same coffee shop before work, same path to the office, same park bench during lunch, same grocery store on Sundays. It isn't exciting, but it keeps my head quiet. When life feels predictable, it feels safe. That's probably why it took me so long to understand that someone else had memorized my routine too. That uncomfortable moment when you see someone and your brain tells you, "I've seen him before," but refuses to explain where. The first time was at the park near my office. He was sitting on a bench across from mine, scrolling on his phone. I noticed him only because he was there the entire time I was. The next time was days later, in line at the grocery store. He stood behind me, humming softly, looking at the candy rack. Then one evening, I saw him standing near the entrance of my apartment building, pretending to read something on his phone. Different clothes, different days, same face. Whenever I noticed him, he never stared, never smiled, never acknowledged me at all. If anything, he seemed careful not to look at me. That made it easier to dismiss. I told myself it was coincidence. Cities are full of familiar strangers. People overlap. Still, I started noticing patterns. He always appeared at places where I stayed longer than a few minutes. Never rushed, never late. Always already there. Or just about to leave. Then came the coffee. One morning, I walked into my usual shop and stepped up to the counter. Before I said anything, the barista smiled and placed a cup in front of me. "Your usual," she said. I hadn't ordered yet. I asked who paid for it. She nodded toward the door. "The guy right before you. He said you'd be in soon." I turned around. No one. The bell above the door hadn't even finished ringing. I didn't drink the coffee. That day, for the first time in months, I didn't follow my routine. I walked home a different way, through streets I'd never used before. I felt silly doing it, like I was playing a game with myself. At a crosswalk, someone stopped beside me. Same man. He stood just close enough that I could smell his cologne. He didn't look at me, didn't react when I glanced over. We crossed the street together. Then he turned the opposite direction. That night, I sat in my apartment replaying every interaction, every sighting, every coincidence I'd ignored. So I changed things. I stopped going to that coffee shop, ate lunch at my desk, switched grocery stores, altered my work hours slightly. And for a while, he vanished. No sightings, no familiar presence. I told myself it worked. Until the note appeared. It was taped neatly to my apartment door, folded once, centered at eye level. No name, no threat. Just 4 words, written carefully. "You forgot your routine." I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, there was another note. This one was slipped under my door. "You usually leave at 7:40. That's when I called the police. They listened, took notes, asked the questions they always ask. Did he touch you? No. Did he threaten you? No. Did he break in? No. They told me to stay aware, to call again if it escalated. I don't think they understood what scared me. A few days later, I came home early from work. The lights in my apartment were on. I stood frozen in the doorway, listening for movement. My heart was so loud I was sure someone inside could hear it. Nothing moved. Inside, everything looked normal. No drawers open, no missing items. Then I noticed the calendar on my kitchen wall. Entries had been added. Not random notes, not scribbles. My routines. What time I woke up. How long I stayed at work. Which days I bought groceries. Which evenings I stayed home. Some entries were crossed out. Some corrected. Even details I hadn't consciously noticed myself. I moved out the following week. Different neighborhood, different schedule, different life. Even now, years later, I still try to stay unpredictable, still change my routes, still avoid patterns, still feel uneasy when someone seems too familiar. Because somewhere out there, someone once noticed when I wasn't. And that scares me more than anything else.